Alright, the next part I need to work on is to add a piece of metal down underneath. This is the piece that I set up for this. I'm gonna go check and see what kind of size and space I have over there, but first I gotta sweep up the water because it's been sprinkling all day. This should be pretty close, and it is. Two coats of paint on each side makes it so that it does not want to slide in and out. Alright, that nightmare's over. I will grind that off a little bit. Let's see if I can clamp this piece in place. I will. Perfect. Perfect. You can see it's not getting all the way through, right up against it, so I'll have to hold it there when I weld it. I had another depression-induced shopping adventure at Harbor Freight. I bought their hammer and dolly set for fenders, which is the more expensive one. Apparently, if you only need to do, what the hell was the other one? Oh, if you only need to seam a door panel, that kit is much cheaper. Yeah, fenders are where to get you. Got a little bit of a lump right there. Try it this way. There we go. That's depressing. Yeah, that ain't gonna work. That pisses me off. Let's see. Die grinder. Die grinder, that's what I'll use. Alright, well, let me get the old welder set up and see if we can make some welds. I had a cart. I thought about getting another one for this, but you know, the cart actually takes up more space, so decided not to for now, because I'm supposed to be more portable in my life now. Alright. Okay, here's what we have. This piece that I tried to weld on, which is going to hang the bent piece. The bent piece will attach here, and also the screws for the door that open and close to hold for the propane tank. I couldn't get a good weld on it over here. Funnily enough, from here back worked really well, which is also where I squared off the piece that's up there. So half of it worked good. So I just need to cut off half of it. The problem is cutting half in this tight area has been a problem. So I'm not going to do it tonight because I'm bleeding. I cut myself on this metal back here. I'm going to need to grind that. So I'm going to leave this till tomorrow. I'm going to cut this off, and then I'm going to make another piece that bends over the top and then sticks down, and I'll weld it to that new piece of metal that I put up on top, because I know that one's good. It'll bump up that part of the floor a little bit for the piece that I have to slide under here, but whatever. It could have been all kinds of stuff. It was probably the bad ground. It was probably the gap. Could have been that I didn't scrape enough of the paint off. Could be anything, but today was, the only thing today was good for was a learning experience on what not to do. So I have to fabricate a new piece of sheet metal. I went this morning to the makerspace and I bent 2 pieces of steel that I had lying around, which I think will cover the space. I did 2 because just in case I make a mistake, foreshadowing alert. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the metal to cover the whole section of the floor in one piece. I was going to do it in several different pieces, but after the first problem I had welding it in and learning about some of the problems that I'm having with the welding, I decided instead to just make one large piece that will fit the whole section. But there's, you know, different depths that I have to cut it. That's why I'm making this more complicated shape. So then I came in here and there's a piece of metal which I'm grinding off. I actually made a video of welding that first piece in before, but because I wasn't able to weld the vertical piece on the outside to that small piece, I've just cut it off. And now I'm grinding the surface of the metal that I'm going to need to
attach this complicated bent piece to, because I think part of the problem I had, besides the wrong size wire and tip and having a gap and welding upside down, one of the problems also was that I wasn't getting good contact between the two pieces. So anyway, so this is what it'll look like. You put it in, and I'm covering the different spots, and I'm looking at it, and then I go, and underneath I'm going to mark the part over on the side that I'm going to have to cut off, that's sort of sticking out underneath the fender well there. But first I'm going to cut a little more off the piece on the side. Going to try to butt weld it at this point is what I'm thinking. I prefer not to, but because of the unevenness of the metal, it would be really hard to do a sort of a flange on it. Like you can see it's laying flat on the left there, but on the right it's sort of sticking up. So I'm marking it underneath to cut away the part that's over under the wheel well. I mean, this is not hard stuff, it's all simple. The hard part is getting, dealing with the rusty metal underneath, dealing with the sizes. So, yeah, I decided to cut a little more off here. So that part in the middle that's marked, but I'm not cutting, that part I'm just going to weld over. The other parts I'm going to try to butt weld. So yeah, this is the section that I'm cutting out to match over by the wheel well. Bought those clamps also at another sort of depression-induced shopping episode. I went to a welding store to try to find the correct tips, and they didn't have them because the Yes Welder, although it's a nice, cheap, good welder, it's made sort of to the European spec. And so the tip threads are metric. And, oh, this is interesting. I'll get back to the menu. See that V I just created there? I noticed when I was inside that there's a hump that I'm going to have to fold this over, but of course you can't fold bent metal. So I cut out a notch so that I'll be able to bend it down. And right about here, I realize that I've made a mistake. I don't have, the piece I've cut is not large enough. And the belt welding is not going to work because it's overlapping on one side and butt welding on the other. So I just decided to do it all over again. That's why I made that second piece, which saves some time. I added in the extra space that I was missing. Got ready to work. Finally figured out if I just sort of clip the pen there on the edge of the table, it won't fall off. I'm sure you've noticed in my videos how everything falls off over and over again. Pretty annoying. You probably also noticed that anytime I say I'm not going to do something or I don't want to do something, I end up having to do it. Yeah, it's pretty special. So cutting that groove again, that worked out great. Spoiler alert, that's going to work out perfectly. I'm getting really good at cutting sheet metal. A friend of mine told me I should probably go buy a respirator mask so I don't breathe in all that iron oxide rust. I told him to shut his mouth. He needs to focus on raising his little children and let me just be the bachelor here. He can be the adult, I will be the kid. These clamps are really good. There's a better one. Like these, you have to adjust the screw like a regular vice grip. There's a kind of clamp that's self-adjusting. I had some before, and I don't know where they are. I gotta get some more. So yeah, that works perfectly. I get that in just right. It's gonna be perfect. So now I do the thing where I dot it, and then I'm going to, use the nipper to cut out the holes. Right here I'm just cutting a little off the corners because I realized the corners are probably going to rust. So I just made tiny little cuts there. So yeah, making dots for the spot welds. Taking another look to see how I feel about that. That's some places there's still a little gap. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually, when I get to that, I'm going to take some of the slivers of metal that I've already cut off, and I'm just going to stick them down, and I'm going to spot weld over them to join them, like right there, right by my wrist, by my hand down there, there's a gap. And yeah, I'll just cover that with a little bit of metal. Time to use the spot weld hole cutter. Here. 16 gauge is, it's right on the edge of what this thing can do. It's like exactly 16 with just a little tolerance, so it's kind of hard to get the thing on and off. But I get through it, and then I sort of breathe a sigh of relief right here. And I'm nodding, but I'm actually nodding to the music that I can't play because of digital copyrights. Man, I wish I could play some of that music. So I'm not going to sandblast this, I'm just going to brush it. I remember in my previous video I talked about the mill scale and dealing with that. So mill scale is basically kind of a form of rust. It's a black oxide that forms in the mill when they make the steel. And it's supposedly a loose material that it's not, even though it's hard as hell, it's supposedly not something that sticks well, and it doesn't, primer and paint don't stick to it well, so you're supposed to completely get that stuff off before you paint. Well, it's been such a pain in the butt, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to go ahead, take my chances. I'll keep an eye on it. If I have to, use OSFO or Core Seal every few years, to seal it, then that's what I'll do. I tried a lot of different things to try to get that stuff off. I tried muriatic acid, I tried sandblasting, I tried sanding, I tried brushing. It's just if it's a loose material, I'd hate to see what they consider to be a tight material. I guess they consider, like, molecular bonded something a tight material. As I'm doing all this brushing, I'm thinking to myself, don't touch the brush, don't touch the brush, don't touch the brush. Because when I look at the work, if the brush is still running, I kind of hold the brush next to my body to look over it, and I end up like, grinding parts of my stomach away, which, ostensibly I could lose parts of my stomach. It's just not a pleasant way to do it. And that looks pretty darn good to me. I think I'll just paint that, and then I'll come back home and edit this part of the video. I've got just enough time left, I think, to add the welding part. So stay tuned for that. That should be coming up in just a few minutes, but right now I'm gonna throw down some paint, run out here, but fortunately I had another can of paint, so always try to be prepared. Nice picture of my back so you can't really see what I'm doing. There we go. I'm not a perfectionist. When when you're painting metal on edge like this, the corners of the metal sort of just stick to the wood, so I was able to flip it over and paint the other side. Boom, done. Here's a tip for you. If you're not sure if you've cut your fingers at all, just wipe them down with a little acetone, and it will find all the little nicks, cuts, and scratches that you just never noticed happened. Oh yeah, oh, that's the spot right there. Oh yeah. I know I should wear gloves. One, it's hard to find gloves that fit, and two, if I have gloves that fit like my welding gloves, it's really hard for me to work in them.
I just don't have that lifelong experience wearing gloves.
One of the problems that I think I had on the other welded piece was I hadn't ground both sides around the spot welds, or where it was going to contact the other metal, and I think that affected its ability to form good arc, besides any other problems I might have had. So I ground it off. I applied some weld through primer, and I fired up the welder here, brought it all in, and I also ground a spot on the top and the bottom of that piece so that I could use that for the ground clamp, so that it was touching both pieces of metal, in hopes that I would improve the arc. I went ahead and put the .030 wire back in. Since I don't have the right nozzle, I am getting the smaller nozzles on Monday, which I will practice with to see if they have less burn through. But the spot welds went pretty good. Over by the wheel well, there was still a gap. I really should have got some clamps and tried to pinch those two pieces together. And anywhere I tried to butt weld, like right there where I just did, it burned through like a plasma cutter. But along the sides there and over through the holes, it made nice spot welds really well. That part, where you saw earlier in the video where I had cut out a notch because of the bump up in the metal right there. I'm using the hammer to push down on the metal to try to help create a better connection with the metal underneath through the various areas, and that kind of worked. Just sort of tapping it didn't work. I also tried a few different settings and tried just stitch welding, butt welding, and running a bead to try to make it connect. But really, the old metal is so, I don't know, I have no idea why it's so soft to weld through, but the slightest hole and the wire just becomes a kind of a really thin plasma cutter, and it just cuts straight through it. But in the end, it came out pretty good. I ground the welds flat. Right here I have to sort of pry a piece up to get it to match, and then butt welded it, and that worked out fine. But afterwards I went ahead and I ground down the spot welds and the stuff to see how good it was welded. And in the end, I tried prying it a little bit here and there with a screwdriver, and it's nice and solid. So I think this piece went in well. Not super pretty because I'm not a really good welder, still learning, but I got it connected. It's solidly connected. Hammering on it and prying on it didn't crack, it didn't loosen, and that should be it. Right there I'm trying to cover a hole. I'm trying to see if I can actually weld up enough to cover a hole, but every single time it would just blow right through. Same with down there where I'm welding. So the next part I got to do is just make a few smaller pieces of patch metal and weld them over those holes.
Yeah, I think an L-shaped piece right there. Another square right there. A little piece right here. And that should be that. But that, I think, is good enough for today. So, got about half of the spot welds up top. Got a little butt weld there, and I burned through there. Then I tried a couple of spot welds and a small bead right there. Spot welding right over here, or tack welding I should say, stitch welding, and then the spots over here work best of all. I think those had the best connection. Definitely closest to the ground. Did pretty good, but I can see there's a gap between the steel, and so I think that accounts for probably missing it some, but it's connected. So maybe I'll fill it in carefully if I can without blowing it out. I'm not sure. And then of course over here, this gap I'm gonna have to cover with another piece. Yeah. We'll see how it all goes, but I think that should be that. It's not bad. That worked better than the other way I was trying it. Let's go take a look outside. It's a good start, but I'm pretty sure I can already tell that I made this piece too long, and may have to make a new one. And I mean long this way. Once I get the interior piece in up here, I'll attach this with a couple of screws and then try to put the hinge on and see if that works. But that's how it's gonna eventually sort of look. This part here, actually, I had thought would be down low like that, but that's way too low, so I'm probably gonna cut it off. I'm still thinking about that. The original one folded in so sharply that it was actually attached right here. Once I have, like I said, I have to put the cover on and find out exactly where the hinge needs to be before I go. But that came out all right. So over, like up under there, probably I don't see very good, but you can see the cut through. That's pretty ugly. This has a slight gap. See how I get it, like right here. There's a slight gap between the two pieces that made it hard. And on the back, of course, I'm gonna have to make flanges that connect like this piece right here and this piece right here. But all in all, not a bad start. Once I get, like I said, I have to put, I have to put the metal piece that goes in up here, like this piece, and I'm going to screw that up in here with an L bracket. And then once I have that piece in there, that'll then I can start trying to fit the bent piece of metal, and I'll cut this across straight wherever it needs to be cut. But yeah, so I guess about a month or more to get to this point. All the cutting off, mistakes, prepping metal, you know, took about a month, I guess, maybe 5 weeks, but that's okay. I mean, it's been crappy weather as well, but that's a good solid piece of metal. That's good enough. I'm happy with that. All right. So, yeah, I gotta, you know, set my mind a little bit, think about how to proceed with the next part, with this next piece of metal. And, you know, I don't know you need to see me filming every piece of metal that goes in, so I may just, you know, catch up on the project and then film as I start putting stuff back together. We'll see. But thanks for watching so far, those of you that have.